I just cut my hair for the second time this quarantine. How's it look? Not like it actually matters, I'm just gonna throw a hat on anyways. Hey, what's up everyone? My name's Winiarski and I'm a photographer and filmmaker here on YouTube as well as Instagram. And a couple of weeks ago, I had a dream. Now, I've been playing around with the GoPro Hero 7 for a couple of weeks now, and I got really interested in the Hyperlapse feature, mainly because it allows you to take smooth looking hyperlapses for way easier than traditional methods. In fact, it feels like you're almost cheating. And like a wise old man can sense the potential of a small child, I too sensed massive untapped potential in this GoPro, and it really got me thinking, how long of a hyperlapse can I actually make with this thing? So, I don't know when I discovered what a hyperlapse was. You know, it might have been 1 or 2 years ago. I think I tried my first one around a year ago. But traditionally, they have always been a very tedious process and frankly, a pain in the butt to shoot. So I don't include them in a lot of YouTube videos. So if you don't know what a hyperlapse is, it's essentially a time lapse with camera movement. And how you would traditionally shoot one is you would take a picture, take a step forward, take another picture, take another step forward. So you'd essentially have a moving time lapse. And while these result in like a super cool effect, they're not very practical to shoot. And like I was saying, they're not something you would really be able to incorporate in YouTube videos without putting a lot of time into them. Thankfully, however, we are no longer caveman, and technology has came along and made this much easier to do. Cameras like the GoPro Hero 7 have a hyperlapse, hyper smooth feature built in, which essentially speeds up the video for you and does image stabilization digitally. So it crops in on the video and uses that extra data to kind of smooth out your shot. Now, the biggest disadvantage to this is you're not taking raw photos for every single image, so you're not gonna have nearly as much resolution, nearly as much detail, but they're so much more convenient to shoot because in theory you can essentially just walk with the camera. Now, I have no idea what the best way to do this is, but that's what I'm going to kind of experiment with right now. So the first step in this little project of mine was getting to know the device. I needed to know this like I know the back of my hand. You know, what keeps it stable? What methods, what mounting methods work the best for, you know, whether it's mounted on your head or your chest or holding it out. I needed to know all of the little quirks that make this device work and what methods were gonna get me the best results. So I ran a bunch of tests. First, I started out on a longboard thinking that the wheels would give me smoother hyperlapses, and then I tried them just walking on foot. Okay, so I think this will be a good area. I want to get some uphill and some downhill because this is just a regular old longboard. So I'm gonna have to be pushing at least part of the hyperlapse if I go with the skateboard, but I think this will be kind of a cool area to test it all out. So I started with handheld on a longboard, then I moved to head mounted on a longboard, and finally I did chest mounted on a longboard. And then I tried all those tests again while walking. So again, handheld, then I mounted it on my head, and then I mounted it on my chest. Honestly, the handheld actually looked the best because it just smoothed out the bumps a lot better when walking. You know, the arm kind of acts as like suspension for the camera, which is super interesting. The chest mounted was okay, but there were some quirks, and the head mounted, honestly, I got the angle just completely off. It was looking at the sky the whole time. While the longboard results were actually pretty good, the biggest problem was you'd have smooth sections and then jerky parts and then smooth sections and jerky parts because it's a regular longboard. So you have to actually push to propel yourself forward. So I didn't really like that. Thankfully, while walking, the results were actually just as smooth as the smooth parts of a longboard, or at least, you know, very close. So I decided that made the most sense. And while I liked the handheld look the best, I knew it wasn't gonna work because holding a camera out in front of you, even something super light, is a huge pain, especially if I was gonna do a 1 mile, a 2 mile, or a 3 mile hyperlapse. It just wasn't gonna work. So I ran a few more tests with a head mount and decided that actually made the most sense. There were just a couple of things I had to worry about. Now, number one, you know, angling it was tricky. If I got the angle wrong, I couldn't check the screen while it was on my head, so I had to be super careful there. And on top of that, I was a little worried because I couldn't change it super easily as opposed to handheld, or chest mounted, where I could just tilt it and turn it if it did get slightly off. But with the initial tests out of the way, I figured all that was left was to find the cool location, chuck it on my head, and essentially just go for a walk. Okay, so step 2 was planning. So for this next little arc in the quest of mine, the planning arc, all I really had to do was work out some kinks, find a time of day, find a location, and just make sure everything was kind of set in stone for the day of the hyperlapse. Using the app, I should have no problem angling the camera and making sure everything I wanted in the shot was properly framed. One thing I was a bit worried about though was battery life. So while I have 2 batteries for the GoPro, swapping them was a surefire way to pretty much screw up the hyperlapse. It was going to be a tough transition to smooth out, but I had to completely take it off my head, put a new battery in, put it back. I didn't want to deal with that. Thankfully, I engineered a little solution. Using a high-tech paper-like adhesive, I actually mounted an external power source that would feed energy into the GoPro and allow me to use it for an extended length of time. If you didn't follow that, I'll slow down a little. I just taped a portable charger to the head mount. Then it was time for the moment of truth. I prepped all my gear, set my alarm, shaved my head just to ruin the continuity of this video, and I was ready. It was time to make a stupidly long hyperlapse. Whew! This is always the hardest part. When you have an idea, but that alarm goes off at 4 a.m. You've got a choice. Do you awaken to the call, or do you go back to bed because your idea is terrible? And the answer is you always stay true to the idea, because you're gonna regret it if you don't. No matter how much it sucks in that moment, no matter how much you're like, this is dumb, it's windy, it's cold, it's dark, I don't wanna do this, you go forward with it anyways. And long story short, it didn't work out. Not at all. I still somehow messed up the angle of the GoPro, so it was just aimed at the sky the whole time. I messed up with the app or something, so I missed like half the footage. It was a total train wreck. Thankfully, I'm editing that part of the video, so we can just highlight the whole part of the timeline. And step 4, persistence. So after the first try went totally perfect, no hiccups, I decided to do it again just because I love not sleeping. And for the most part, things went a lot better. The only small hiccup was while filming my hyperlapse, I actually made 7 different clips because there were times I wanted to just check the angle or reposition slightly, so I broke it up into 7 different clips. That made me run into some problems. Step 5, editing. So when I threw all my clips into Premiere, again, the underlying problem was I needed to blend 7 clips together into a fluent, seamless hyperlapse. Now I'm not going to go into too much detail how I did this because it was actually a very lengthy process, but through a lot of things I did. Using warp stabilizer, color correcting, transform controls, lens distortion, dissolves, speed ramping, color grading, and sound design, I finished my hyperlapse. The total distance covered was about 4.8 miles, it took 90 minutes to film, and I did the math, and from the camera's perspective, you're essentially moving at 320 miles per hour. Enjoy.
Never sees me, I'm losing every battle. No one ever sees me, I'm losing every battle. No one ever sees me, I'm losing every battle. Can somebody save me, I'm losing every battle.
There it is, that's my hyperlapse. Hopefully you thought it was cool. I spent way too much time trying to get it to work, but it was one of those projects I just really wanted to see to the end. Oh, and if any of you have seen the movie 1917, you know, the movie that's supposed to look like it was taken in one take, there's 6 hidden cuts in my hyperlapse, so you know, you can go down in the comments and try and throw out the timestamps you think I made hidden cuts at, and I'll let you know if you're right. But have fun, stay creative, and I'll see you all in the next one.